Good evening. Tonight we celebrate our last Tomorrow's World of a decade which has been both exciting and perhaps a little frustrating by finding out how some of the projects we've covered in the 70s are shaping up as we move into the 80s. And we start our programme for the last time with our familiar but still mystifying collection of titles and the now vintage theme music of John Dankworth.
We've really enjoyed them. As we prepare for a new decade in 4 days' time, you can't have failed to notice the predictions flying around about life in the 80s. But the prophets should prophesy with care. We've made a few mistakes in our time, like this one in the early 70s. A report on plans for the Channel Tunnel by William Woolard.
Excuse me, sir, are you taking dinner?
I think I'll wait until I get to Paris, actually. It's only about an hour and a half, isn't it? At this very moment, they're taking decisions not on whether the tunnel should be built, but on who should pay for it and how it should be run. Within 6 years, you and I will actually be driving through it. In West London, they'll be building a vast new railway terminal. Something like this, called perhaps London Central, with 8 platforms and customs facilities and all the rest to get with 50,000 passengers a day. By 1980, they'll have half-mile long trains leaving London Central every hour on the hour and thundering through the tunnel at up to 200 miles an hour, cutting down the travelling time to Brussels and Paris, for example, to about 2.5 hours. Over the next 4 or 5 years, these empty fields will be transformed into a giant railway roundabout capable of taking 3,000 cars an hour and their families through the tunnel and onto the roads of France. 270 cars to each train, and a train leaving every 5 minutes. That's the equivalent of building the M1 across the channel. A large area of Western and Central Europe will come within a comfortable day's driving of London, and that mighty ditch, the Channel, will have been reduced to an average day's journey to work. And when the holiday's over, no worry about waiting for a ferry or the children being sick on the Channel crossing. You could be in England within an hour of reaching the French coast.
Ironically, the way people are talking about that project today, we could go out and make exactly the same film all over again.
But here's something we did get right, and it's a story we're happy to tell once again. Happy Christmas, Toby. You may remember Toby Churchill. His first appearance on this programme was to demonstrate his own invention, which he called a light writer. Toby, a one-time engineering student at Bath University, lost his power of speech after picking up a mystery illness in France. But thanks to this machine, Toby and others like him who could hear but not speak could communicate again. Well, basically, it's a typewriter linked to a much smaller version of those public news displays you see in the centres of large cities. And today, Toby, who's a director of the successful company that markets this machine, has refined it. It's lighter, it has touch-sensitive keys, and even an adjustable display unit so you can point it at whoever's talking to you. And there's a word from our sponsor, and a happy Christmas to everybody. But Toby suffered a double blow with that illness that he caught. Not only could he not speak, he became paralysed from the waist down. The only limb he could move was his left arm. But in the baffling way that so many handicapped people refuse to let such disabilities cripple their independence, Toby adapted a Leyland Mini so that despite his problems, he could actually drive it. Back in 1975, Raymond Baxter explained how it worked.
This car has only 2 conventional controls, the handbrake and the gear selector of the automatic transmission. Everything else has been incorporated in this single joystick type control column for the driver's left hand. Handbrake off, and here we go. Now, the steering, which is power steering off a high-performance saloon, is operated by rotating this control column. That's full left lock. That's full right lock.
And he's even adapted those controls. Now he's put them in an Austin Princess Export model, so the ordinary steering wheel can stay on the left-hand side. And that means if something goes wrong or Toby gets tired, anyone else can drive the car too. All right, Toby? And I've no doubt Toby Churchill will be back with us in the 80s.
Who could have foreseen in 1970 that the all-male reporting team of Tomorrow's World was to receive during the decade an almost overwhelming invasion of females? But then we fellas didn't let the girls in without insisting that they earned their spurs first.
How did I do?
It's interesting, isn't it, that most successful of all selling ingredients, sex, is being left out of petrol right now.
It's a trout, a rubber one. And there it is.
It's rather like riding a bicycle. The flippers at the back go up and down, which pushes you forward. And with a bit of practice, you can really go quite fast. That wasn't too frightening.
Look down for your footholes first.
Yeah, there.
That's it.
Oh, I've got the shades.
Despite Tomorrow's World's obvious obsession with putting women through their paces in the 70s, we did manage to spend just a little programme time investigating two of the most vital projects of the decade, nuclear energy and supersonic flight, projects which it was important to get right. One of the most controversial programmes we made started with Raymond Baxter's away day to Casablanca, 1 week before Concorde was due to be launched into regular service.
Here at Casablanca, we are 1,550 miles from London, a mere 1 hour and 40 minutes by Concorde. Just another example of the way in which the world will shrink for a new generation of airline passengers when Concorde goes into regular service next week. Probably the only unusual experience felt by the Concorde passenger on his first flight is the enormous accelerations. When the two-stage reheat comes in, when one leaves the realms of conventional flight, it's exactly like putting one's foot down in a highly tuned sports car. And that, remember, when we are accelerating beyond the top speed of, say, a 747 Jumbo or a TriStar. Now, the outside air temperature is minus 61 degrees, but the temperature of the skin of the aeroplane, warmed by this colossal friction from the rush of air, is 108 degrees. Indeed, this window is quite warm to the touch. The fuselage is designed to take up the expansion caused thereby. In fact, at these temperatures, the whole aeroplane grows by about 1 foot. And under the cabin floor here, at about 3-foot intervals, expansion panels are built in exactly as they are on any big bridge and precisely for the same purpose. And that's just a glimpse of the sort of technical problems which you come up against if you start to design an aircraft as new and different as Concorde.
Concorde, the technological masterpiece of the 70s. But as we also reported in that same programme, Concorde's commercial success was by no means guaranteed. Its problems are its range and its passenger capacity. There are very few occasions on which all of its 100 seats can be filled. The more fuel Concorde has to carry, the fewer passengers she can take. Even going to New York, the destination Concorde was originally designed for, British Airways carry on average 71 going out and 65 coming back. Paying passengers are turned away because the aircraft can't fly with a full load. One of the great sadnesses of the decade must be that financing and operating Concorde has cost our national airline £27 million in 3 years. On top of the £1,137 million it cost us to develop Concorde in the first place.
Another disaster has been the £4 billion it's cost Britain to develop our own form of nuclear power reactors. The advanced gas-cooled reactors were due to go into service in 1971, but 4 years later, in 1975, Dungeness was still far from ready.
Ordered at a cost of £80 million and due to be commissioned in 1972, it might just start producing electricity in 1977. And really, nobody has a clue how much it's going to cost us. The boiler, designed to fit inside that concrete shell, didn't fit. The CEGB say it was hopelessly distorted during manufacture. Another version of the story is that the contractors were just not used to working to the ultra-fine tolerances that the nuclear industry demanded. Whatever the cause, the result was the consortium went into liquidation and the boiler had to be built by somebody else. Perhaps the most surprising fault of all, the specification called for mild steel brackets which would come into contact with the carbon dioxide, the coolant gas. The result? Corroded brackets which had to be rebuilt in a special stainless material. It's been put to me that in terms of capital tied up and revenue lost, this power station is costing us in the region of £50,000 every day. It's certain that the whole story of what's gone wrong here will never be told.
And Dungeness B is still not working. The government's so appalled by both delays in construction and the ever-increasing costs that they're even considering scrapping our future AGR programme and buying American reactors instead, the type used at Harrisburg. Our Concorde and nuclear reports both reflected a growing frustration during the 70s about the way Britain was allocating its money and its scientific talent, and the returns on that investment. Look at what we spent in 1975 on research and development into aerospace, 290 million, and nuclear, 142 million. Compare that to research and development spent on other key manufacturing industries in the same year. Mechanical engineering was 103 million, textiles only 26 million. But the wealth created by them was over 40,000 million pounds, compared to only 1,000 million from aerospace, and very little from nuclear projects like the AGRs. The result of putting so much effort into just two areas is a decline in our manufacturing industries compared to other countries. In Japan, for example, the annual growth rate has been 3 times as great as ours. And ironically, the two industries in which Japan has virtually no research and development involvement at all are aerospace and nuclear.
Another growing concern has been our dwindling energy resources, and particularly oil, not only to keep industry going, but transport too. And if ingenuity was all it took to get from A to B, we'd be the richest nation on earth.
Sadly, none of these ingenious ideas could provide a realistic solution to our travel problems. At the end of the decade, we're still sitting in our conventional cars, in our conventional petrol-burning traffic jams. But for the 1980s, there is new hope. Within the next 6 months, Britain's latest public transport project, the delayed Metro, will open on Tyneside. I well remember standing right here 5 years ago, long before any of this ventilation shaft was here, to witness the optimistic ceremonial start of the project performed by the County Council Chairman, Roland Scott Beattie.
It gives me great pleasure and even more satisfaction to attempt to cut the first sod with that machine.
As the first sod was successfully cut, the price of the project stood at £114 million, and the first stage was due to open in 1977. "16 months later, when it was clear that date wasn't going to be met and the price had gone up to £170 million, the first of the new supertrams had arrived at the Metro Test Centre. These twin lightweight cars are designed to carry 300 people in rush hour conditions at 50 miles an hour. And though the doors are amply wide enough to allow prams and pushchairs to get inside, there are no luggage racks and there's no guards van, because these are units designed to carry a lot of people over short distances. Many people believe that here on Tyneside is a pattern for public transportation which could be successfully copied elsewhere. Today, the tune is a slightly different one. The main problems behind the 3-year delay have arisen because a large proportion of the 34-mile system runs over an existing working railway. The new sections of Metro are being built by outside contractors working to agreements which stipulate time and price for each job. But the rest of the track work, the old route, still owned by British Rail, has to be converted to Metro by BR's own engineering teams, who are not bound by any contracts. Up to now, Metro has had no direct control over how long it takes or how much it costs to carry out this large part of the project. But British Rail has nationally agreed working practices with the rail unions. It cannot afford to make a special case for little old Metro. Most unions have viewed Metro with deep suspicion. Who, for instance, was going to drive the supertrams? The busmen or the railmen? Both jobs are threatened by the new system. It has taken 4 years to agree on the compromised job share-out. And there have been some technical surprises, too. The team has had to take down and rebuild the famous portico of Newcastle's Central Station because the new tunnels underneath were making it collapse. They would like to have taken down Earl Grey's statue in the city centre. Permission for that was refused, and the engineers have had to cope with both his lordship and some particularly bad ground where the major new underground interchange will be sited. In 1976, Britain was making savings and the whole project looked ripe for the chop. After a delay of 12 months, Metro survived, and the government agreed, subject to a price ceiling, to pay 2/3 of the final cost. However, at today's price of £230 million, that ceiling has been broken, and Metro must now use all its ingenuity to raise more than £30 million locally, whilst persuading some very sceptical ratepayers that the extra bill won't simply be dumped on them. Despite all, Metro goes ahead, presenting the Tyneside landscape with new architectural and engineering monuments. There's never likely to be another Metro quite like this one. British Rail isn't going to allow any other local undertaking to present them with the problems that the Metro has created here on Tyneside. If there is to be something else like this built in Britain, British Rail will want to do it themselves. But perhaps the overriding lesson to be learned from this project is that the Tynesiders are getting their Metro at an exceedingly good price. More than 10 years ago, the City Fathers in San Francisco built the Bay Area Rapid Transit System, and it cost them £10.5 million a mile. The new rapid transit going in Washington, D.C. will cost an estimated £33 million a mile. This Geordie version of the same thing at £7 million a mile looks exceedingly good value.
It's not long to that landmark year, 1984. But did George Orwell get his predictions right? Fortunately, only in one area. Telecommunications have intruded into our lives, but not for political purposes like Orwell's telescreen. And ironically, the ingredients aren't futuristic technological wonders. They're basically just our old friends. The telephone and the television, linking with a computer database. Although this, rather futuristic TV, isn't typical at the moment. Prestel, you may remember from our reports, was pioneered by the Post Office in the early 70s. And unlike supersonic speed and gas-cooled reactors, this is a breakthrough that will affect all our everyday lives. You can already use it to do your shopping. Now, a list of wines to stock up again after Christmas. Now, I don't fancy the first type. I'd like some Chateau Talbot. So, let me see. I'll have 2 cases of that. Now, I can put in a credit card to pay for it, and the orders are on the way. This is the more normal size of set, and at the moment it's telling me where to take my children this holiday. That looks like games that you can play with children. Yes, that's right. Then we'll have some sport. Just 3 of 100,000 different pages of information. Now, it may look just like any other computer showing its paces, but it is quite different, because up till now computers have traditionally been remote, expensive machines aimed at specialists, and they only affect us when they send bills or lose our road fund tax. But the revolutionary thing about Prestel is that in your home or your office, computers join the mass communication market for the first time. Sitting at home, you can send information like this to head office, and you can keep a copy of it. There it is, for your own files. And Prestel's selling well abroad, although it's being fiercely chased by foreign competitors who are trying very hard to catch up. For example, at the International Exhibition in Paris this year, our Prestel stand was attracting a lot of well-deserved attention. Then, mysteriously, the lights went out, but just on Prestel. Our phone lines went down for 3 days, which couldn't have done much for sales orders. But other exhibitors, particularly the French Diderot, were spared the gremlins. So someone obviously thinks Prestel's important enough to be assassinated. It should have a bright future once enough sets are available. If you're one of the 400 people who have sets at home, you're one of only 400 in the whole world. Prestel will only lead in this field if more sets become available, and then we've got to buy them. At the moment, it costs up to £1,000 to have one, or £25 a month to rent, with telephone costs on top. But if demand becomes great enough, we're promised these costs will fall dramatically. And as the service expands, it will get more sophisticated. And this is the very latest, most intelligent Prestel, because it has its own microcomputer inside. I can use it to work out my mortgage, my payroll. It can teach my children or me. At the moment, up on the screen here, it's asking me to spot the electrical circuit. And if the light goes on, I'm right. So let's try. I think actually it should be C. Let's try that one. No, incorrect. But I can keep on playing with this until I've learnt all about electrical circuits and get it quite right. If the fuel and job shortages that are going on at the moment reach crisis point, we will be confined to our homes in the future, and it's then that Prestel will be far more vital. By 1984, I'd gamble that although Big Brother won't be watching us, we'll be watching Big Busby.
Let's finish with 3 clear-cut success stories from our not-so-distant past. Well, this may look like an ordinary piece of corrugated iron, but it's not. It's called trapezoidal cladding, extra strong material for building. Now, the problem with this stuff is that it always comes in straight sheets, as you can see. And as a result, well, we've got the countryside littered with box-like buildings which are effective, but not very attractive. But 4 years ago, we reported on a new kind of metal press that can actually bend the corrugated iron without buckling it. And as a result, all kinds of interesting shapes have since been made. Like our studio set today, for instance. It makes the BBC look, well, almost palatial, don't you think? But now buildings using this curved corrugated iron are springing up all over the UK. The passenger shelters for the Tyne and Wear Metro. A new image for this workshop in Worcester. There's an ultra-modern looking sports centre at Mansfield, and even Heathrow Airport is getting a new look.
This uninspiring looking object is in fact an inspiring success story which emerged 2.5 years ago during the Tomorrow's World competition for new inventions. In the very best convenience food way, the contents of this foil bag are ready after only 40 seconds in boiling water. And that small bag replaces all of this. A tin of kaolin for making red-hot poultices, which has to be stirred for 15 minutes in that water and then spooned out, get it out, really sticky, onto a dressing. Now, that obviously takes a lot of time. But the new instant kaolin poultice has a special plastic, which you have to cut round the edge. I'll just finish this one off. And then that special plastic is designed to peel away from kaolin, which is notoriously sticky. Then it's ready for the patient, so I'll stick it on my arm to show you. And it's as simple as that, with this foil keeping it hot for about 15 minutes. It's been such a success in hospitals in Britain and abroad that the inventor expects to double the number of his staff soon. And one of the main reasons for the success is his new type of customer. Because the treatment's easier and quicker, it's perfect for all animals, particularly horses suffering from strains and gravies. Hello, Christine. Would you like to try it? I'm sure he'd rather you do it than me. We're going to try it on Shannon and see if he likes the new instant poultice. Well, he obviously doesn't mind it going on at all. There it is. Then it's just a question of bandaging it up. And now for a very human story.
Hello? Is that Walter Buchanan? The man on the other end of the phone had a severe stammer. It's Michael Rodd, Mr. Buchanan. I understand. Can you simply listen? I'd very much like to bring our appointment forward half an hour, if that would be possible. In January 1977, I was in Edinburgh to meet Walter Buchanan and to report on how he was coping with what was then a severe speech problem.
Buchanan! Will you tell me the names of these objects? See how you get on with that. Fair enough. I think that's given us enough anyway.
But at that time, Walter was one of the first people in the country to be trying a new solution for stammerers. It worked by playing an electronically generated note into his ear. And because he couldn't hear the words that he was saying, his stammering was greatly reduced. At that same session 2 years ago, Walter demonstrated the dramatic difference it made to his speech.
Now let's see what happens with Baa Black Sheep.
Baa Black Sheep, have you any wool? Yes, sir, 3 bags full. 1 for the master, 1 for the dame, 1 for the little lad that lives down the lane.
The following October, a Scottish firm went into full production with the unit. Control circuitry, microphone to pick up the voice, earpiece to relay the generated note to the stammerer. And now, the unit is available through your doctor on the National Health. It isn't a cure for stammerers, only an aid, but it's proved a great help to many, including Walter Buchanan, who we're happy to learn has virtually lost his stammer altogether. A fine note on which to wish you all success in the next decade, and to remind you that we'll be back next year with the first of our new look programs for the 80s. But if this is to be the age of the electronic silicon chip, let's not forget the wonderful pieces of mechanical engineering which have been the backbone of tomorrow's world through the 70s. From all of us, Happy New Year to you.